I want to thank everyone for coming. For me, this, as I said this morning, it's kind of scary because of a lot of people say they hate history. And I was one of the few in school that really liked it. And I don't know whether it's because I had great teachers or I just liked the subject. I don't know what that was, but somebody told me a poem today about if the world is ever flooded. They wrote it in the front of a history book. If the world is ever flooded, I will hold on to this book because it's so dry it will keep me afloat. And I thought, wow, that's really the worst I've ever heard, as far as history is concerned. But it's great to see all of you here. Such a big crowd tonight, and I'm glad that you've come. And I hope that what we find in this time period will be very helpful for you in piecing together things that you may not have understood before. So let's go ahead and begin with prayer. And I'm going to ask Wayne. Wayne, could you lead us in prayer for just a moment this evening, and then we'll get started.
Our Heavenly Father, we're thankful for the opportunity that is presented to us tonight. And we pray that the thoughts that are presented would be pertinent to our lives, and that we might apply them as we study the Scriptures and live our lives here in this land. We're thankful for the work that has been done to prepare this material, and we pray that you would bless each of us as we go through the night. In Christ's name we pray.
Amen. So I want to tell you that as we go through this, I want you to feel free to ask questions. If you want to raise your hand, that's all right. If you want to just shout out a question, that's good as well. Either one is fine by me. We're going to, if you'll open up your packets right now and look, we'll just talk quickly about the purpose. Here are the 4 purposes that I hope to achieve while we look at this subject of the Bible and ancient history in the next 5 weeks. Correlate ancient history with biblical history. Put those two together. That's very important so that you get a sense of why biblical events and how they're happening in a world that is really affecting them. And of course, God's people are affecting the world at that time. So if you've ever thought about the geography of where God placed his people, it is at the crossroads of both of the earliest civilizations in the world. The civilizations of Mesopotamia, which we'll learn about in just a moment, if you don't know that key term, and the civilization of Egypt, which I think we're all quite familiar with. And those, whenever Egyptians wanted to go into a place where they would conquer and go into Mesopotamia, they had to go through the area of Palestine, as we call it today, or Canaan, as it was called in biblical times. Whenever the Mesopotamian kings or empires or emperors wanted to go over to Egypt or through that area, they had to go that way too. So it was at a very, very important crossroads. Secondly, to enumerate and highlight extra biblical sources that validate biblical history. One of the things that we're finding again and again and again is that every time we've got something mentioned in the Bible, as archaeology continues its great work, it corroborates what we find in the Bible. And so we're going to look at several of those during this time period. It's going to be a faith-building thing, I think, for you in that matter. Third, build a mental timeline. This is very important. For me, it helps me greatly to know that if somebody talks about Josiah, a great king, as was spoken this morning, then I immediately am able to place Josiah in a timeline biblically and also in a timeline historically. I know what's going on basically in the rest of the world. And that, I think, is very important to match the biblical timeline with the historical timeline. And then finally, explore the connection between the Jews of the Bible and the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian dilemma and jihadi terrorism that we see today. What we have to understand is that there were biblical events that changed the course of history and that are still affecting our history today. And sometimes people don't understand that the things that happened in biblical times have a profound effect upon this. When I taught sixth grade at elementary school, when I got to a certain time period, I had to teach ancient Israelite history. That was part of the curriculum. When I got to a certain time period, I said, now, guys, I'm going to spend 30 minutes telling you the story of what happened to the Jews after the destruction of Jerusalem and correlate it between the dropping of the two twin towers. And they look at me and they would go, what? How is that possible that something that happened way back at that time could have any effect on our world today? And it does have a profound effect. And so those are things that we want to look at. First of all, let's get the terminology down. Ancient history. According to most historians, ancient history is 476 AD and earlier. So that's the fall of the Roman Empire to Germanic tribes. So when the Roman Empire fell, from that point on, they call that modern history. And that confuses a lot of people, because if you say modern history and you're talking about something that happened in 1000 AD, they would think of that as ancient history. Ancient history is anything that's happened before that time. But do understand that it's difficult for us to put ancient history together the further that it goes back. So our biblical record gives us an amazing understanding of things that happened before history occurred. And I want to just give you an idea of this. I'm going to give you, later on, a disclaimer. The search to create an accurate ancient history is an ongoing process. Depending on the interpretation of the current artifacts that they dig up, new information from the most current finds, and the continued evolution of the science of archaeology. So I'll give you, for instance, here's my object lesson. If you didn't know anything about the U.S. culture or civilization whatsoever, and this is 2,000 years from now, and the U.S. culture and civilization was gone, and you were digging down into this area, and you came upon the Canyon Church building, and you found this, what would you know about our civilization if you knew nothing else at all? Pretend like you're an alien coming from another planet, and you found this 2,000 years later, and you put it at a certain time period. What would you know about our culture or civilization? Yes?
We had the ability to manufacture plastics.
Okay. And if you have the ability to manufacture plastics, you have the ability to do what? How do you get a plastic? What does it come from?
Petroleum oil.
It comes from petroleum. So we have the ability to drill oil and use fossil fuels. Okay, that's one thing. What else would you learn? We had a language. We not only had a language, we knew how to write it. Okay, we had a written language. Okay, there are some cultures that don't have that. That's why it's very difficult to figure out what their history is, because everything is an oral tradition to them and nothing is ever written down. What else would you know? We worshipped what?
The Canyon Church worshipped the genie that lived in that bottle.
Oh, thank you, Dean. Next, what was that? All right, we had agriculture, okay? The ability to grow the grapes, juice the grapes, somehow keep them in a container that would keep them from getting, bad, not rotting, it's preserved. Yes?
There's a nutrition label.
That's right. And look at that. What does that say? Oh, the barcode tells you a lot about our abilities to do things. And if you didn't find anything else except for this, what else do you know about us? We're thirsty. We're a very thirsty culture. Well, we can do metal. This is just plastic. There's no metal in it. So each one of those artifacts, when they find something, they tell you something about a culture or civilization. And with anything that's written during that time period or written by a historian during that time period, then that's how archaeologists and historians piece everything together and put it together. And yes, they do rely on the Bible quite often to give them the history. They might be skeptical of whether or not the Bible is correct, but that's something that is corroborated again and again. Second term, modern history, we went over that. BC, We all know that means before Christ, okay? But there are new terminologies that are coming out. In this very secularized world that we live in, a lot of people don't want to say something like in class BC, which indicates before Christ. So they'll say BCE, before the Common Era. Of course, the Common Era is delineated by the birth of Christ. It still is, okay? AD does not mean after death. If it did, what would we call the 33 years of before Christ's birth and after his death? Okay, we would have no way of symbolizing those 33 years. So, AD comes from the Latin Anno Domini, which means in the year of our Lord. Again, they don't want to say that, so they'll say ACE, after Common Era, some of them. And then sometimes you'll just see CE, which means Common Era. And all of those are ones that I have seen before. So if you ever see those, that will just help you out in just delineating that. Now again, that doesn't mean that everything in the AD is considered, only 476 years of AD is considered ancient history. So basically everything before Christ would be certainly ancient history, okay? There's a Latin term that you see often, and especially when you're trying to figure out exactly what year something happened when we don't have a written record of it, and that's CA, and that just stands for, it's a Latin term for circa, or around, or approximately, or roughly, or about. So if you see the CA in front of like 1750 BC, that would be about the year that Hammurabi is doing his thing in the old Babylonian Empire. And so we just are saying it's roughly that time period. Culture, I've given you the definition of a culture as opposed to a civilization. And that is kind of important because civilizations grew up around where the Bible says that man was placed in the Garden of Eden. So our first civilizations actually occur there, which is not unusual for us to think of at all. A culture is just attitudes, customs, beliefs, and that distinguishes, one culture from another. The American culture is a little bit different than other cultures in the world, even though world cultures are blending so much more together today. Is the American culture, do we have a civilization? Well, according to historians, we do, because we have a centralized government, we have a surplus of food, we have an organized religion, we have a division of labor, and we have a written language. So you get those 5 things, and then you say, okay, that's a civilization. To give you a contrast, the American Indian had no civilization whatsoever. They didn't have those things because none of them, except for later on, the Seminole Indians actually wrote down their language or had a written language before a white man actually arrived. Now we're going to be going through a few things. The ancient world itself that we're going to be looking at, and I hope that you can see this well, the ancient world that we'll be looking at is basically comprised within the area of 5 great bodies of water. One of, which you're not seeing on this one. You've got the Great Sea or the Mediterranean Sea. The Bible calls it the sea toward the setting of the sun or the Western Sea. And you have another body of water just north of what we would call Turkey today or Asia Minor. That's the Black Sea. That's not mentioned in the Bible. You have the Caspian Sea over to your east. That's not mentioned in the Bible. You've got the Persian Gulf or the Lower Sea that it's talked about. And then the Red Sea, of course, is mentioned in the Bible. The 2 that are mentioned is the Great Sea and the Red Sea. And so in that area, you find some important geographical places. One of them is the Fertile Crescent, which you're going to notice on page 3. That is a crescent-shaped kind of green belt, a place where crops would grow, where there was enough water for, to do some fertile land growing and things like that. You're never going to have somebody, I hope this works here. Whoop. Oh, there. You're never going to have anybody traveling from this area of Canaan straight over this way. They just don't travel that way. In fact, when we find out about Abraham, he starts down here in an area called Sumer that we will learn about in a little city-state called He goes this way, goes up to Haran in here, and then his father, Terah, dies, and then he comes down this way. So he follows the Fertile Crescent, okay? This way is so deserty that only nomadic people that know how to deal with camels really, really well want to try to cross that without dying. Okay, and so you also notice during this time period of ancient world history, you will find some cities, okay? The first cities that we know about were like city-states. They were like a country and a city together. Was one of those. It was a very powerful and important city-state. So Abram came out of a place that was well known and has been excavated and has been determined as to its location, okay? Next, you're going to see another picture of the ancient world here. And in this picture, you get to see in the red, you see a little bit of some more regions of the area. So at the eastern part of the Fertile Crescent, you see Babylonia in the south of the Fertile Crescent, and then you see Assyria to the north, okay? And then you're going to see Aram, or it's sometimes called Syria in the Bible, and then Ammon, Moab, and Edom that are on the eastern side of the Jordan. And then on the western side, you see Canaan. And then, of course, at the mouth of the Nile River, which is called Lower Egypt, simply because it is lower in elevation, and that's the area where the children of Israel actually inhabited, that area of the delta, that's called Lower Egypt. The capital of Lower Egypt was basically Memphis, and we'll learn about that later on. And you don't see in this map Upper Egypt. And Upper Egypt is just going south on the Nile, okay? And as you go south, you go in higher elevations. Okay, so ancient world again, all right? And then you see the Fertile Crescent there in green. That kind of helps you out to see that it's the area around the Nile and up through Canaan and over up to Assyria, and that's like the top of the northern part of the Fertile Crescent, and then all the way down to what we call through the land between two rivers, which we'll get to in just a moment, called Mesopotamia, and then you have Sumer at the bottom that we'll talk about in just a minute. So this is the Fertile Crescent right there. What's interesting about Canaan is it has exactly the same latitude line as we do in Southern California. And guess what? It has about the same weather. It's very mild. It gets the winds coming off the Mediterranean Sea, and so it never gets really, really hot there, and it never gets really, really cold there, except up on Mount Hermon, where it's going to do some damage with snow, and we get our mountain snow, you know, just in the Sierra Nevadas here. So it's kind of fun to think about that it is the same latitude line. The Levant is a new term that I am starting to see a lot of, and I'm not quite sure where they got that term, but if you ever see it, it encompasses more than just Canaan. It takes in, and this is a modern, you know, map, of course, it takes in everything down to the Sinai Peninsula, where the children of Israel actually walked through to get to Canaan. It takes in Israel, modern-day Israel, any Palestinian holdings, Jordan on the other side, Syria, up to the north, and Lebanon. So it's all of that area, and sometimes historians will just name that whole area the Levant. Okay, so if you ever see that, don't be confused about it. It's just that area. Ancient Mesopotamia is the land between two rivers, and the reason why it is very important biblically is because both of those rivers that are still here today, the Tigris and Euphrates, are mentioned in the Bible as coming out of the great river. There was some great river that was in the Garden of Eden, and then it split into 4 rivers. Now you might say, well, where are those rivers today? Well, land changes, okay? And so we don't know where the first 2 rivers are, but the Tigris and Euphrates are still here. And when Moses wrote Genesis, he knew that the people would recognize those, and maybe those other 2 rivers were actually there at the time but have dried up, and we don't know where they are located at this time. But the actual word Mesopotamia means land between the rivers. Sumer is this area right here at the southern end. It's an alluvial plain. The Tigris and the Euphrates both flooded just like the Colorado River used to do. Why doesn't the Colorado River flood anymore? What did we do to it? Yeah, we put a bunch of dams on it. Okay, well, the people, the Sumerians got very, very smart. Really, their problem that they had living at the southern end of Mesopotamia caused civilization. Because what they did is they just, every time those rivers would go nuts and flood their land, they would say, the gods are angry, the gods are angry. Well, finally, somebody came up with the idea of doing some canals and reservoirs and putting up levees and little dams and all that kind of stuff. And when the rivers overflowed, it just kind of went to all those areas. And then it produced water in a great large area. And as soon as they did that and started concentrating on it, they actually were farming better. When they started farming better, they had a surplus of food, and a surplus of food allowed people to divide the labor. And listen, we don't want to, starve to death and have a great famine, and the gods get angry at us. So we need a centralized government to kind of control all this farming that's going on and keeping these serfs working all the time. And it just kept going. And how are we going to keep a record of all the farm products that we do and the business transactions that are now going on between all these people that are dividing the labor and doing different things? Well, we got to find a way to take our language and write it down, and it just grew from that point. The moment that man was able to figure out how to do a surplus of labor, he really kind of set the stage for civilization. One other term that I think is important is visur. And it's a term that you don't often hear about unless, how many of you have seen Aladdin? Yeah, do you remember who the visur, the evil visur was there? Okay, what was his job?
Yeah, you remember who the visur, the evil visur was there?
Yeah, he just advised the king. That's right, except he was a real evil guy. Well, you're going to learn.
Yeah, he just advised the king.
We have
That's right, except he was a real evil guy.
In the Old
Well,
Testament.
you're going to learn
When we get to that, we will
have a very famous
turn the page,
visur
please.
in the
Okay,
Old
oh,
Testament.
no, two more
And as we get
disclaimers.
to that, we will.
It is not unusual to have variant spellings of things.
Okay, two more disclaimers.
So if I give
It
you
is
one
not
spelling,
unusual to
you
have
say
variant
spelled a
spelling
different way,
of things.
don't worry about
in
that.
ancient
You'll find a whole bunch of different
So
spellings.
if I give you
And
one
it's not
spelling, you
unusual
see
to have
spelled a
variant
different
names.
way, don't worry about that. You'll find a whole bunch of
Continue
different
this whole
spellings.
process
And
of
it's not
our
unusual to have variant
history.
dates.
Then we get to
As
the point
we
where we
continue
can
this
actually
whole process
nail
of
down.
archaeology
I would
and
say
history,
this,
then we get to the
that
point where
anything
we can
before
actually nail down
about
the dates.
1000
I would say this,
BC is
that
very,
anything
very hard.
before about 1000
And there's
BC
another reason
is
why
very,
some
very
events are hard
nail
to nail down too.
Extremely
Because
hard.
kings
And there's another
were
reason
very,
why
very
some
clever.
events are hard to nail
And
down
if
too.
they didn't
Because
like
kings
what was going
were
on
very,
in
very
the kingdom
prideful.
before
And
them,
if they didn't like
they
what
might
was going on
decide to erase
in
all
the kingdom before them,
It wasn't until
They might
just recently
decide
in
to
our
erase
history book
all
do we have
history.
a female pharaoh.
it wasn't until just recently in our history books do we have a female pharaoh.
Yeah, that's
Her name is
Hatshepsut.
Hatshepsut.
All right, she was
Okay,
a
one of my kids
very,
called her
very
Hatshepsut.
skillful
Yeah, that's
ruler.
Hatshepsut.
And you will even
All right,
see
she
her
was a
wearing
very,
the beard
very
of,
skillful
she wore a
ruler.
fake beard
And
to
you
show
will
that she
even
was a
see her
pharaoh,
wearing
just like everyone
the
else.
beard
She referred to herself
she
as
wore
house
a fake
of
beard to show that she was a
Her
pharaoh, just like everyone
That's how
else.
she
referred
referred
to herself in
All
the
right,
annals
it's fascinating
of Her
that we've been
Majesty
able to find
himself.
her only because
That's
of
how she referred to
archaeology, because
herself.
the guy
Right,
that came
this is
after her
fascinating that we've been able to find her only because of archaeology, because the guy that came after her felt like that he was supposed to be on the throne.
So that really
All those years
causes
that she was on the
problems
throne.
in
And
figuring
she
out
usurped
when
the throne
things
during that
occurred
time. He's going to
at
erase
that
that.
time. They might
So
even
that
have
really
something down in
causes
history that
problems
never
in
happened.
figuring out
Just
when
because
things
they
occurred at that time. They might even write something down in history that never happened.
Hope that we
Just
are
because they
figuring
want
those out to make sure
And
that they're
again, we have
verifiable.
to try
Okay?
to
Turn the
hope
page
that we
again.
are
I'm going to give you
figuring
a
those
biblical
out to make sure that they are
chronology here.
verifiable. Okay?
that I
Turn the
use
page
an awful
again.
lot.
I'm going to give you a
You can
biblical
read over that yourself at a different
chronology
time
here.
period. We're going to move on.
That I've used
But also,
an
for
awful
those of you
lot.
who go to this
You can
church,
read over that
we have
yourself
a
at a different
children's
time period.
period
We're going
of
to move
biblical
on.
history.
But also, for
And
those
there
of
are
you
10
who go
of
to
them
this
instead of
church,
14.
we have a
So they
children's
divided
period
history.
of
So
biblical
children are in
history,
class
and there are
Sunday
10 of
morning
them
with
instead of
those cards.
14. So
They
they
learn
divide
them
it differently.
as
So if your
first
children are in
fathers
class
to the
on Sunday
land
morning
rather
with
than
those
before the
cards,
flood or
they
after the
learn
flood.
them as first
Patriarchal.
fathers
They
and
put
to the
all that
land
together
rather
as
than
first
before the
fathers.
flood or after
All right?
the flood.
And then to the
patriarchal,
land is, of course,
they put all of
the
that
conquest
together
of
in
Canaan,
first
or
fathers.
excuse me, the
there.
wilderness
All right?
wanderings.
And
you
then
can
to the
coincide
land
each
is,
one
of
of these,
course,
so your
the
kids
conquest
are
of
getting
Canaan, or
this
excuse me,
kind
the
of
wilderness wanderings.
biblical
And you can
chronology.
coincide each one of these, and
As
your
adults,
kids
it
are
would probably
getting
be
this
better
kind
if you learned
of
this
biblical
one.
chronology.
And as the kids grow up, they will
As
probably
adults, it
copy
would
that.
probably be better
So
if you
those
learned
are your
this
biblical
one.
chronologies.
And
The
as
next
the
two
kids grow up, they will
pages
probably
basically give
top
you
that,
major
okay?
events
So
in biblical
those are your
chronology.
biblical chronologies. The next two
And
pages
so those two
basically give you
pages
major
just
events
tell
in
you
biblical
the major
chronology.
events of the Bible
And
as
so
you go
those
from
two
Adam and
pages
Eve all
just
the way
tell you
into
the major events of the Bible as you go from
All
Adam
right,
and
so
Eve
if you turn
all
over
the
to
way
page 7
into
now,
the beginning
we're going to go
of the
back to
church,
Sumer.
okay?
Do you see
All right, so
right
if you
here
turn over to
in Sumer,
page 7
the
now,
city-state
we're
of
going to go
Earth?
back to Sumer.
Okay, this is
Do
where
you see
Abram
right here in
was born.
Sumer, the city-state of
So
Earth?
what was he born
Okay,
into?
this is where
What was that
Abram was
civilization
born.
like? What was his city?
So
Well,
what
it
was
a
he born
monarchy,
into?
We know that much.
What was that
We found
civilization
the
like?
king
What was his city?
writing.
Well, it was a monarchy.
Was
We
a
know that much
civilization.
because we
We
found
actually have
we
their
found the
writing. It's called
king's
cuneiform.
writings during
Cuneiform
that time.
writing.
It was a civilization.
And that writing
we
was
actually have their
prolific
writing. It's called
in the
cuneiform or
Mesopotamian area.
cuneiform writing.
By the way, we have
That writing
covered
was
in the
prolific
Syrian area,
in the
up here
Mesopotamian
in
area.
the north.
By the way, we have uncovered
where
in the
Nineveh
Assyrian
was,
area,
a
up here
library
in the
of
north.
Ashurbanipal.
We have uncovered
one of the
where
Assyrian
Nineveh
It is
was,
written in
a
cuneiform
library
so
of
that after thousands
Ashurbanipal,
of years,
one of the
and there
Assyrian
are over
kings. It is written in
20,000
cuneiform writing, so they had it
that have
for
been found in that
thousands of
library,
years.
thousands
And there
of
are
which have
over
not still
20,000
been translated out of
that have been
the
found in that library,
into English.
thousands of which
Goes
have
on at
not
the University
still
of Chicago.
been translated out of cuneiform
research students.
into
They're
English.
trying to get
Goes
their
on at the
doctorate
University
degree,
of
and that's how
Chicago.
they make
Daily,
them do that.
there
They
are
translate
research
out of
students.
cuneiform.
They're trying to get their doctorate degree.
Most of it
That's
is
how
just simply business
they make them do
Every
that.
once
They
in a while, you come
translate
across something
out of
in a
cuneiform
library that's
into.
super
Most of it
important
is
and
just simply
important.
business actions.
And then
But every
they
once in a while, they
can
come
really
across something in the library
learn
that's
much
super
more about that
important to
civilization.
history.
So out of
And
this
then they can-
area,
they
in
can
a
really,
region called Sumer,
learn
which is the
much
southern
more
end of
about that
Mesopotamia,
civilization.
came
So out of
Abram.
this area,
Okay.
in a region called
Not
Sumer,
only
which
did
is the
Abram
southern
come
end
out
of
of a
Mesopotamia,
geographical
came
area
Abram.
that we know about,
Okay.
he came out
Not
of
only did Abram
polytheism.
come out of
I'm
a
not saying
geographical
Abram
area that we
was
know about,
polytheism.
he came
I
out
don't know
of polytheism.
But I do
I'm
know
not saying
that
Abram
this
was
area was
polytheistic.
full
I don't know that.
of the belief.
But I do know
They
that
had
this area
thousands
was
of gods
full
in this
of
area.
the belief
And the
in many
priests
gods. They
had
had thousands
the job
of
of making sure they
gods
knew
in this
every one of
area.
those gods.
And the
So if you were a
priests
priest,
had the
more
job
gods
of
you
making
made
sure
up,
they knew every one of those gods. So if you were a priest,
because you had to know how to
the
take
more
care
gods you
of
made up, the
everything
better
those
your
gods
job
wanted.
security was.
So
because
out
you
of
had to
this
know how to
culture
take care
comes
of
Abram.
everything those
He's a
gods
believer
wanted.
in
So
one
out
God.
of this
Out of
culture
this culture,
comes Abram.
in this area
And he's
where
a
we think
believer in one
possibly
God.
the
Out of this
Garden of
culture,
Eden was.
in this area where we
These two
think
rivers
possibly
the mouth right there,
the
right at the
Garden of
Persian Gulf.
Eden was, because
Then we
these two
think
rivers
that
have a
Abram,
mouth right
you know,
there,
is
right at the Persian
from
Gulf.
that area
Then
as well.
we
So
think that Abram,
when we
you know,
think
is
about
coming
this,
from
it is
that area
important
as
for us
well.
to understand
So
what the
when
Bible
we
calls
think about
the
this,
area that
it
Abram
is
came out
important
of.
for us to
Someone look up
understand
Genesis
what the Bible
11:1,
calls
and then
the area
also in
that
verse
Abram
6.
came
We've
out
got
of.
Genesis
So
1 and
someone look up
we'll be
Genesis
moving on in
11:1,
just a moment.
and
While
then
you're
also
looking
in
there,
verse 8.
look at
Who's
this.
got
This is
Genesis
an
1,
old
and
picture
we'll be moving
of
on
what
in just
they
a
found
moment.
as
While
they
you're looking there,
excavated the
look
earth.
at this. is. This is an old picture
So this is
of what
Earth,
they
and
found
you'll see that
because they
huge mound in the
excavated
back.
Earth.
Okay, that was
So
kind of
this
the
is
city
Ur,
area.
and you'll see that
They
huge
found
mound
other
in the
areas
back.
about it.
Okay,
and in
that was
as they
kind of the
excavated
city
down, they
area,
found what was
and they
called
found
a
other
ziggurat.
areas
It was
about it,
a-
and in that, as they
They
excavated
have
down, they
restored
found what was
that
called
ziggurat.
a
It looks
ziggurat.
like
It was
this
their
today.
ancient temple.
See it way over
They
there.
have
in the distance?
restored that
And here's
ziggurat.
another
It looks
picture.
like
This is a
this
massive
today.
temple
See it way over
where
there in the
they
distance?
worshiped their God.
And here's
One of
another
the
picture.
coolest things that
It's a
ever happened during
massive
the time
temple
period
where
that I was
they
teaching
worshiped
one of
their
my
gods.
former students,
One of the
Marcus,
coolest things that ever happened during the time period
went to,
that I was teaching is one of my
volunteered
former
and went over
students,
to
Marco Fernandez,
this area of Iraq
went
and
to,
was in there after the
volunteered and went over
conquest of
to
Iraq by the U.S.
this
Army.
area of Iraq and was in there
so
after the
when he's over there, he
conquering of
stands
Iraq
up
by
there
the U.S. Army.
and takes a picture of it and
so
sends it to me
when
and
he's
says,
over there,
tell
he
your
stands
kids
on
I'm
this
standing on
and
the
takes a
ziggurat
picture
of
it
Ur
and sends it to me
right
and
here
says,
in ancient
tell
Syria.
your
So I
kids
pop
I'm
that thing
standing
up
on the
the computer
ziggurat
and
of
it's
Ur
dug out
right
there
here
in
in ancient Sumer. So
assault
I pop
rifle or
that
whatever
thing
you
up
call
on
it.
the computer and their eyes
And
just
there he is
bugged
in his
out. There he
fatigue,
is with
and
his,
he's standing
assault
on this
rifle or
area.
whatever you call it.
This is what Abram
And there he is in his fatigue.
This is what
and he's
he
standing
knew
on
about
this area.
as a little
And this
kid.
is what Abram saw.
Okay? And,
This is
and
what
they
he
knew about all the
about
gods
as
that
a
were in
little
this
kid.
area. Of course, in Genesis
Okay?
11:1,
and they
it
knew
calls
about
it
all
a
the
land
gods that were
of
in
gods.
this area. And of course,
Go ahead and
in
read
Genesis 11:1, it calls it a land of something. Who's got it? Go ahead and read Genesis 11:1. Who's got it?
Okay, keep going.
Now the whole earth had one language and one speech.
Okay, keep going.
And it came to pass.
What does your Bible say? Is it S-H-I-N-A-R? Yeah, Shinar.
What's your Bible say? Is it S-H-I-N-A-R?
The biblical land
Yeah,
of
Shinar is what I would say, or Shinar.
Is what
Okay,
we call
that is
Sumer
Sumer.
today.
The
Okay, and then
biblical
who's
land
got
of
verse
Shinar
eight?
is Sumer, is what we call Sumer
Ricky got that
today. Okay, and then who's got verse 8? Rick, you got that too,
The
Lord?
Lord scattered them abroad from there.
I thought it was
over the
verse
face of all the earth that they
Where does
ceased
it mention
building the city.
Okay.
Babel?
I thought it was verse 8.
Okay.
Where does it mention Babel?
Therefore its name is called Babel.
Okay, so that's one of those city-states in Sumer, Babel, which later on becomes...
Okay, so that's one of those city-states in Sumer, Babel, which later on becomes
So
what great city?
that is one of the city-states that's near
Babel,
where Abraham
right?
was.
And
Babylon
so
became
that
such
is
an
one of the
important
city-states
later
that's
on.
near
Actually,
where Abraham was.
a
And Babylon
great,
became such an
two
important
great
city-state
empires
later on
in
that it
different
actually
time
became the beginning
Okay,
of
so
a great
Abram
two
comes
great
out of there.
empires in
Genesis
different
11:31.
Okay,
if
so
you're right there. Genesis
Abram
12
comes out of
God
there.
is calling
Genesis
Abram out of this area.
11:31. If you're
And
right
he
there,
goes
Genesis
to
12:1.
But
God
when
is
he
calling
gets to
Abram
Canaan,
out
he
of
doesn't
this
stay
Ur
in Canaan the whole
area,
time.
and he goes to
Okay?
Canaan.
There are times
But when he
moves
gets to
a
Canaan, he
different
doesn't
area.
stay in Canaan the
And
whole
so
time.
look at Abram's journey. What does it look
There are
like?
times when he moves to a different area. And so look at Abram's
That just
journey. What does
follows.
it look like?
Abram went basically
What does it follow?
the Fertile Crescent.
That just
So he
follows.
traveled all the way up to Haran.
Abram
His
went
dad died.
basically
Terah
the
dies at
Fertile
Haran.
Crescent. That's
And
what
then
he
it goes
did.
on. And
So
when
he
he gets
traveled
into
all the way up to
Canaan,
Haran
then
where his
God
dad
tells him, I'm
dies.
going to give you
Terah dies at
everything
Haran.
that this
And
land.
then he goes on and when
Right
he gets
now,
into
but it will
Canaan,
happen
then God
for
tells
you
him, I'm
later
going to
on.
give your
But he
descendants
later
this land.
on goes
Not
into
right now, but it will happen
and
for you
what have you
later
thought
on.
about? I mean,
But he
our
later
idea
on
of
goes
ancient Egypt is
into
what?
Egypt.
Basically,
And what have you thought about? I mean, our idea of ancient Egypt is what? Basically, what immediately comes to your mind?
Well, you might say,
Pyramids,
yes, you might say,
okay.
no, well, you have to know something
Abraham
about
saying
Egyptian
pyramids.
history. First of all,
Well,
he did
you might
see
say
the
yes,
king,
you might
or
say
he
no, but you
spoke
have to
to
know
the
something
king.
about
Because
Egyptian
what
history.
happened?
First of
What
all,
does the king
he did
want to
see
do?
the
You
king
know
or
the
spoke
story.
to the king because what
Want to take
happened?
his
What does
wife
the king want to do? Those
as,
of you who know the story.
as the Pharaoh's wife, or the
He wants to
king's
take
wife,
his
because
wife
everyone said, hey, that's a beautiful woman. This is not a good time.
as the Pharaoh's
Not a
wife or the
good
king's
thing.
wife
Because
because
you're such a
Abram's
beautiful woman. I'm afraid I'm going to get killed over
not a
you.
good time.
You're so pretty.
Abram's character, not a good thing in Abram's character. You are such a beautiful woman. I'm afraid I'm going to be killed over
So
you.
anyway,
You're
so
pretty.
he's so
Jeff
afraid
is
of that he says, tell everybody you're my sister.
So anyway, so he's so afraid of that he says, tell everybody you're my
So he
sister.
says, okay, I'll
Well,
take
when
you to the
everybody sees the
household.
beauty of
And all of a
Sarah,
sudden we know he's
they
around
say,
the king, and the
have her.
capital of that
And so he
king
says,
is
okay, I'll take you to my household.
Right,
And all of a sudden we know he's around the king, and
So that's in
the
northern
capital at that time
Egypt.
was Memphis.
And so if he's in
Right,
Memphis,
and that's
he
in
will
Lower
most
Egypt.
certainly
So that's in northern
traveled
Egypt.
around the area.
And so
of
if he's
Egypt.
in Memphis,
And yes,
he almost
has
certainly
seen these
has
things.
traveled
Abraham
around
saw
the
it.
area of Giza.
Because
and
they
yes,
were built
he has
in
seen
the time
these
period of
things.
Egypt, which was
So
called
Abram
the
saw
early
pyramids
kingdom.
because they were built
And so
in
that
the
early
time period of
kingdom,
Egypt,
middle
which is
kingdom,
called
and
the
late
early
kingdom are the
kingdom.
ways that we
Oh,
divide
and so that
ancient
early
Egyptian
kingdom,
history.
middle kingdom,
And it
and
is
late
the early
kingdom are the
kingdoms
ways
right
that we
there
divide
that
ancient Egyptian
the pyramids,
history.
that
And it was the
way too
early
costly.
kings or
After a
pharaohs
while,
that
they
built,
began to bury their dead
the
in
pyramids.
what's called the
That
Valley of
became
Kings.
way too
And what
costly.
king did we discover?
After a while,
was
they began to
in the
bury
Valley
their
of
dead
Kings,
in what's called the Valley of
Kings.
Kings. And what king did we discover his tomb in the Valley
We'll
of
talk
Kings?
more
That's
about
probably the
him
most
later
famous
on, because
of
he's
all.
got some
Yes, King
really
Tut or
important
Tutankhamun. Okay, we'll talk
Very,
more
very
about him
important
later on
And
because
so,
he's got some
King
really
Tut was not
important
found in those
parents.
pyramids.
Okay,
Those
very,
were the
very
pyramids
important
of
parents.
Khufu.
And so King Tut was not found in
And you
those
see that
pyramids.
obelisk
Those
right
were the
there?
pyramids of Khufu,
That obelisk
a king called
has
Khufu.
all of the
And
great
you see
works
that obelisk right there?
which Abram
that
did not
obelisk
see,
has all of the
okay,
great
because
works
she
of
came
Hatshepsut,
at a later time.
which
period.
Abram did
But
not see.
some other
okay,
of the
because
Israelites
she came
may have seen
at a
when they
later
went down
time
to
period.
Egypt. Abram
But
also
some
saw
other
the Sphinx.
of the
So
Israelites
he was
may
in
have
this
seen
area,
when they went
then
down
he
to
got
Egypt.
to see all
Abram
of
also
those
saw,
things. It's
saw
kind
the
of
Sphinx.
fascinating.
And
to
so
me
if he
to
was
know
in this
that
area,
he's going to
then
see
he got to
major
see
things
all of
like
those
that.
things, which is kind of
Now,
fascinating
let's
to
go
me
on
to
here.
know that he's going to see
What's happening
major
when
things
Abram
like that.
is in Egypt
Now,
and in Canaan?
let's go on
What's
here.
going on
What's
in
happening when
the
Abram is
area
in
of
Egypt
the-
and in Canaan?
Well,
What's
when a
going
king
on back
comes,
in,
we don't know
in
his
the
actual
area
name.
of Mesopotamia?
He later
well,
calls
a king
himself
comes.
Sargon.
We don't
And
know his
Sargon is
actual
used
name.
in the Bible.
He
a couple
later
of
calls
times to
himself
refer to
Sargon.
different
And
kings.
Sargon is used
And
in the
the
Bible
whole
a couple
way
of times
that
to
came about
refer to
is that
different
there was a man who was a
kings.
cupbearer
And the whole way that
And
came
he
about
decided to
is
murder
that
him.
there was a man who was a
And
cupbearer
when he
to
murdered
the king.
and usurped the throne, that wasn't a
And he
usual
decided
thing
to
cupbearer
murder
to
the
do.
king.
Because he
And when he murdered the king and usurped the throne, that wasn't unusual for a cupbearer
you had to
do.
really trust your
Because
cupbearer.
he could, you know,
So
he
anyway, when
poisoned
he
the king
did
or
that,
something
he
like that
named
pretty easily.
himself
You had to
Sargon,
really trust your
which means
cupbearer.
truth.
So anyway, when he did that,
And
he
he wanted
named
everybody, you know, I'm
himself
the truth.
Sargon.
And after
which
he
means
did that,
true
while
king.
Abram's in Canaan
And
and
he
while
wanted
in
everybody
Egypt,
to know,
this guy
I'm
started
true king.
conquering.
And after he did that, while Abram's in Canaan
so
and down
he
in Egypt, this
creates
guy starts
the
conquering
first empire
all the
that we
city
know of.
states. And
And
so
writes down
he
all of
creates
his great
the first
things that he
empire
has done in
that
a
we know of.
55-year
And
reign.
writes down all of
in
his
cuneiform
great
writing, of which
things
we
that he has
found
done in a
several
55-year reign.
Now, go to the right
in
side of this,
cuneiform writing,
this
of which we have
PowerPoint slide, and you'll
found
see
several
the
tablets.
conquest
okay?
of Ashdod.
Now, go to the right side of
much,
this,
much later on
this
when the children
PowerPoint
of Israel
slide. You'll
there.
see the
was
conquest of
by- was
Ashdod
achieved by
and Canaan,
another Sargon,
much later
who
on
called
with the
himself
children of
Sargon
Israel
the
there.
Second. And
Was
Assyrian
was
kings loved to
achieved
call
by
themselves
another Sargon who
Okay,
called himself
so this
Sargon II.
Sargon,
And Assyrian
goes
kings
right
loved
here.
to call
Here's his
themselves
empire.
that.
And we call it the
Okay,
empire
so this
of
Sargon,
Okay, but
if
the
you look right
Sargon
here, here's his
here,
empire.
that
And we
is
call it
Sargon
the
of
empire of
Assyria.
Akkad.
He calls
Okay,
himself,
but the
he called
Sargon
the
here,
second. He called
that is
himself
Sargon
the
of
king
Assyria,
as well.
he calls
and
himself,
in Isaiah
we call him
21
Sargon
and
the
2,
second. He called himself the
That's
true
not
king
the same
as
Sargon.
well. And
The
in
guy
Isaiah
that
21
early,
2, he is
in
mentioned.
about 2200
That's not the same
started
Sargon.
the first
That was
empire.
thousands of years earlier,
This man.
in about 2200 BC.
So
that
going back
started
to
the first
Egypt
empire.
and looking at
And
what
that's
happens
this
in
man
Egypt
right
after
here, okay?
Abram's time.
So
you'll know
going back
that
to
Abram
Egypt
goes
and looking at
dies
what
in
happens
Canaan.
in Egypt after
Isaac,
Abram's
of course,
time,
is born.
you'll know
He
that
stays his
Abram
life in
goes
Canaan,
and
because he
dies
goes down
in
to
Canaan.
Egypt as well.
Isaac, of course, is
And
born.
what-
he
what-
stays
what's the
his
same
life in
lie
Canaan,
that he
but But he goes down to Egypt as well, doesn't he?
My wife is
And
my wife
what's
is
the
my-
same lie that he tells down in Egypt?
Because Rebecca's really beautiful.
My wife is
again,
my
so- He gets
My wife is my
Pharaoh in
sister.
trouble down there
Okay.
at the same time, all right?
Because Rebecca's
Quite
really beautiful
interesting how
again.
these guys
So
deal
he
with
gets
that.
Pharaoh in
They
trouble
come
down there at the same time.
go
All right,
into
so it's quite
ancient
interesting
Egypt as
how
well.
these guys
And
deal
so
with
we
that.
need to learn a
they
little
come
bit more
down
because later on,
and go into
from
ancient
Jacob, we got
Egypt as
Joseph.
well. And so we
Joseph
need to
is
learn a
sold
little
into
bit more
slavery.
because
He goes
later
down to
on,
Egypt.
from
And after
Jacob,
he
we've got
interprets
Joseph.
dreams,
And
the
Joseph is
Pharaoh,
sold
the
into
king,
slavery, and he
says,
goes down to Egypt.
I'm going to put you
And after he
in control
interprets
of
dreams,
everything.
the Pharaoh or the king says,
Control
I'm going to put you in control of everything, especially in control of the collection
And
of
so
food
Joseph
during the
becomes
7 years of plenty that you're telling me
He is
my dream
that
says. And so
And here's
Joseph
where you got to wonder,
becomes the
why
deserter.
don't we
He
see
is that man.
name?
And here's where you got to wonder,
Why don't we
why don't we
find
see
something about you?
Joseph's
Well,
name?
if you know the
in
history of
history? Why
Egypt,
don't we
Joseph
find
is
something
probably
about
ruling at about
Well, if you know the history of Egypt, Joseph is probably ruling at about the time when some
from the sea
invading
peoples
kings
came a
and took
marauding
over
group of
Okay.
very,
From the
very
sea
swift
peoples
warriors
came
called
a
Hyksos.
marauding
And the
group
Hyksos took
of
over.
very,
We learn
very
about them
swift
in,
warriors
sixth
called the
grade.
Hyksos.
They took over
And
the
the Hyksos
dynasty
took over.
of
We can
ancient
learn about
Egypt.
them at the end of 6th grade. They
So
took
when the
over
Bible
the
says in
dynasties
Exodus that
of
a
ancient
Pharaoh
Egypt for about
arose
100 years.
and did not know Joseph,
So when the Bible
what
says
was
in
it
Exodus
that
that a
everything
Pharaoh
did that
arose and did not know Joseph,
it was wiped
what
out?
might have
Why?
happened
Because
to
those
everything
were
Joseph did
illegitimate
that was great?
kings sitting on the
It was
throne
wiped out.
of
Why?
Egypt.
Because
in
those
Egypt,
were
according
illegitimate
to
kings
Egyptians. And
sitting
finally, when
on
they
the
took that
throne
back
of
over,
Egypt.
they
in
probably
Egypt,
looked at
according
the
to
Hebrews
Egyptians. And
and
finally,
thought
when
to
they took
themselves,
that back over,
all right,
they probably
might
looked at
one
the
day
Hebrews
join
and
with
thought
our
to themselves,
enslavement.
all right, that they
And so that
might
begins the
one day
period of
join
enslavement
with our
because that Pharaoh
enslavement.
did not know
And so that begins
And so
the
most
period
people
of
placed Joseph
enslavement
in the time
because
period
that
of
Pharaoh
the Hyksos
did
reign.
not
Yes,
know
it was a
Joseph.
Pharaoh.
And so most
They wore a
people
double
placed
crown, by
Joseph
the way.
in the
The
time
red
period
crown
of the
said,
Hyksos
I
reign. Yes,
am
it was a
king of
Pharaoh.
all Egypt.
They
And
wore a
the
double
white
crown, by the
says, I
way.
am
The
king
red
of
crown
all Egypt.
said, I am
So
the king
if
of
they
Lower
conquered
Egypt.
both,
And the
then
white
they wore
crown
a
says,
double
I am
crown.
the king of Upper
Joseph was
Egypt.
certainly the
And
deserter.
so if they conquered both, then they wore a double crown.
He
and
only had a
Joseph
red
was
crown.
certainly the
He
deserter
only
to a
controlled
king
Lower Egypt. He
who
was
controlled
the
only.
Any
He only
questions
had a
about
red crown on.
that?
He
Anything
only
that we've gone
controlled
through to this
Lower
time
Egypt if he
period?
was a
I know I've
Hyksos
gone
king.
very,
Any
very
questions
quickly.
about that?
Okay.
Anything that we've gone through
Moses
this time period?
All
I
right,
know
once
I've gone
again,
very,
who was
very
the
quickly.
Pharaoh? We don't know.
Okay.
Okay, we have
Moses
no
in
idea.
Egypt. All right, once again, who was the
That
Pharaoh?
during
We don't
Moses'
know.
time,
Okay,
that
we
the
have
people
no
of
idea.
Israel
We do
were
know,
building
however, that
cities,
during Moses'
okay?
time,
And those
that the
cities
people
that
of
they
Israel
were building
were
called
building cities,
Ramses
okay?
and
And those
Tigris.
cities
Now,
that they were building
we might not
were
know
called
which Ramses is what. We
and
today know of
Tigris.
a city
Now,
called Ramses that they
we
have
might not know
However,
which Ramses is
again,
what. We
Ramses
today know
might
of a
be
city
term
called
like
Ramses that they have
Sargon.
excavated.
And there were many
However,
Ramses. that
again,
were going on.
Ramses
We don't
might
know
be a
which
term like
Ramses
Sargon.
was there.
And there were
Maybe
many
it was they
Ramses
were called Ramses
that were going on. So
during
we don't
those
know which
times.
Ramses
But again, why
was
no
there.
extra
Maybe it was a
biblical
pharaoh
sources
called
verifying
Ramses during Moses' time.
And
But
this is
again,
something
why
that I
no
think is
extra
very,
biblical
very
sources
important.
verifying
Look
his
at what we
existence?
find sometimes in history.
And this is something that I
Ramses
think
II
is very,
battled with
very
the Hittites
important.
and almost
Look at what we
lost.
find sometimes
Yet
in
he calls
history.
this a great victory.
Ramses II battled with the Hittites and almost lost his life. Yet he calls this
So
a
do the
great
Hittites.
victory. In his
Both of them
annals,
call it a
he
great
says
victory.
it was a great
In
victory.
reality, we've come to understand that
So
it was
do the
a stalemate.
Hittites.
They both
Both
signed
of
a
them call it a
treaty,
great victory.
and they
In
got the
reality,
listing
we've
of
come to
victories
understand
back.
it was a
They
stalemate.
actually can
They
find
both
it.
signed a treaty.
So,
and they
what do
got
these
the
kings
listing
do
of that
again?
treaty down.
Would somebody
They actually
want to
can
write
find
down
it.
what Moses did?
So, what do these kings do again?
their rule?
Would somebody want to write down what Moses
That's
did
embarrassing.
in Egypt
Okay? That's embarrassing.
against their
All right,
rule?
Sennacherib
Probably
claims
not.
a great
That's
victory over the
embarrassing.
Jews by taking
Okay,
46
that's
cities
embarrassing.
and
All right,
surrounding
Sennacherib
Jerusalem, and then
complains a
actually
great victory
saying
over the Jews
in
by
his
taking 46
office, I
cities
shut
and surrounding
up Hezekiah
Jerusalem,
like
and
a
then
bird in
actually
a cage.
saying in
Okay,
his
that's all he
office,
says
I
about it.
shut brought
But he
up
doesn't mention
Hezekiah
the
like
fact
a bird in a
that
cage.
he
Okay,
lost
that's all he says
180,000
about it. But he doesn't mention the fact
and he had to go
that
home. and
he
the
lost
siege of Jerusalem was
180,000
thwarted
of his
by
men.
God's hand.
And
He
he
doesn't
had to go
mention that at
home.
all.
And
Hezekiah
the siege
claims
of
a great
Jerusalem
victory
was
because
thwarted
Jerusalem was
by
not.
God's hand. He doesn't
You have to
mention that at
recognize
all.
all this.
Hezekiah
The Word
claims a
Bible
great
very clear
victory
about
because
that.
Jerusalem was not
It states
captured.
all the rest of the cities were
But you have to
captured.
recognize all the other cities. The Word Bible's very clear about that.
So you see
It
there,
states all the rest of the cities are
again,
going to swallow
the
them,
victory,
except for Jerusalem.
each is calling it a
So
victory.
you see there,
the Meshul or
again,
Moabite
the
stuff,
victory,
the king of Moab claims a
each
great
is
victory
calling
over
it a
Israel,
victory. And
yet
in
the
the
Bible states
Meshul or
that this
Moabite
was Israel's
stone,
great
the king
victory.
of Moab claims a great
2
victory over
Kings
Israel,
3:4
yet the Bible states that this
It just
was
goes to
Israel's
show you
great
that
victory
what we
over
look
Moab
at
in
sometimes
2 Kings 3, 4
cannot
through 27.
be
It just goes to show you that what we
And we
look
get
at
two different ideas.
sometimes
So the fact
cannot
that Joseph is
be
not mentioned,
verified.
the fact that Moses is
And
not
we get two
mentioned,
different ideas.
not
So
unusual.
the fact that Joseph is
I
not
don't think
mentioned,
we'll probably
the fact
ever
that
find
Moses is not
because I think the
mentioned,
King
not
James did a very
unusual
good
at
job
all.
of making
I don't
sure.
think we'll probably ever find them mentioned.
This is
Because I
the
think the
extent
kings were
of
doing
the
a very good
Egyptian
job
empire
of making sure
at its
that
height.
they weren't going to.
Okay?
This
Notice
is
it
the
goes
extent
from
of
all
the
the way
Egyptian
from
empire
northern
at
Egypt
its height.
all the way down
Okay?
into
Notice
another
it goes
great
from
civilization
all the way
that those
from
people don't know
northern
about,
Egypt
that had little
all the
to do
way
with
down
biblical
into
history,
another great
except
civilization
you've
that
heard
most
of
people
Cush
don't know
before.
about, that had little to do with
What do you
biblical
remember about
history,
Cush? Who knows?
except you've heard of Cush before. Okay, what do you remember about Cush? Who knows that? You remember?
No. She was from Ethiopia, okay, which is a biblical name possibly
No.
for.
She was from
but
Ethiopia.
We think it's
Okay, which is a biblical name
for
possibly
Nubian kings
for
down in that
Cush,
area.
but
But
we
as
think
far
it's
as
a
Cush
biblical
is
name for
concerned,
Nubia. There were Nubian kings
Moses
down in
married
that
a
area.
Cushite woman.
But as far as Cush
Okay.
is concerned,
And then
Moses married a
Ethiopian
Cushite woman.
is going
Okay.
probably through
And
Cush
then
back to Ethiopia.
The
after he
Ethiopian
hears the gospel.
is going probably through Cush
So
back
that
to
area,
Ethiopia
Egypt
after he
actually
hears the
conquered
gospel. And
during the reign
so
of Tutankhamun
that
III,
area of
and
Egypt
also
actually
conquered up
conquered
all of the Levant
during the reign of
all the way
most of
to
the
northern Syria,
and also
got
conquered
into
up all of the
Euphrates
Levant
River
area,
Valley
all the
area,
way to
and
northern Syria, and got into the Euphrates
these
River
pictures right
Valley
here. This is, of
area
course, the
after
death
northern
mask of King
Constantine.
Tut. This is Queen
These
Nefertiti.
pictures right
She
here, this is of course the
wife
death mask
of
of King Tut.
Amenhotep,
This is Queen
the only
Nefertiti.
king
She
in
is the
Egyptian
wife
history
of
that
King
decided to worship one
Amenhotep,
God
the
who is
only
greater than all others.
king in Egyptian
And that
history
made him a
that
very,
decided to
very
worship one
unpopular
God
king.
as greater
His
than all
son,
others.
her
And
husband,
that made
or
him
her
a very,
son,
very
is King
unpopular
Tut.
king.
He dies at about the age
His
of
son,
18.
her husband's, or her son,
This is
King
Ramses.
Tut. He dies at about the age
Ramses
of
was a
18
great, great
or 19.
warrior
We
king
found this
as
too.
well.
This
He
is
did a lot of
Ramses.
conquering.
Ramses
He
was a
created
great,
four
great
statues of
warrior
himself
king
at Abu
as well.
Simbel.
He did a lot of
And,
conquering.
at Abu
He
Simbel,
created four
they had
statues
those
of
four
himself at
statues
Abu
there so that
Simbel.
all the Nubians
And
who would
at
come
Abu
up the
Simbel,
river,
they
would see
had
these
those
four
four
great
statues there so that all the Nubians who would come up the river, they would see these
By the way,
four
I
great
gave,
statues.
I
and
gave
just
money
go,
to the
"Ooh,
saving
must be great
of,
pharaohs
of,
there. They scare
of
me,
this
they
guy.
scare me." By the way, I gave money to the saving
There,
of,
because when they
of
dammed
this
up the
guy's
Aswan Dam in the 70s,
artifact
they knew
there.
that it was going to
Because
flood the
when
area.
they dammed up the Aswan Dam
where
in
the
the
four statues
70s,
were. And
they
so
knew
the
that it was
Egyptians
going
couldn't
to flood the
afford to
area
save it,
where this
so they
was,
put out a
where his
worldwide
four
call
statues
for
were.
money.
And so
They
the
gave a little
Egyptians
bit of
couldn't
money to
afford
it.
to
They
save
raised it,
it,
and
so they
moved
put
it
out
off
a
the
worldwide
area.
call
So
for
that
money.
when
And I gave a little bit of money to it, and they raised it and moved it off to higher land, so that when the lake.
And here you have
Aswan,
Hatshepsut.
lake
You see, she's
was,
got breasts,
created there,
and she also had a
they
beard.
wouldn't,
You know, that's Hatshepsut.
And here you have
She's
Hatshepsut.
quite
You see,
unusual.
she's got breasts,
During the
and she also
time.
had a beard.
But most of the third was
So
her
she's quite
nephew.
unusual.
And he wanted
During
to
the
run.
time period. Most of the third was her nephew, and he wanted
he
with
just tried to
her,
erase
but
her
she
from
skillfully
so we found
worked
out.
it so that
And
she
that we
died,
found it.
and he just tried to
Okay,
erase her
so
from history.
then here are your
We
three
found out.
kingdoms, and here are three major individuals who lived in those
Okay,
three
so
kingdoms.
then here are your
Abraham
three
lived in the old
kingdoms,
kingdom,
and here are three major individuals who lived in those three
Joseph
kingdoms.
lives in the middle
Abraham
kingdom,
lives in the old kingdom about
and
2200
then
BC.
Moses lives in what's called
Joseph lives in the middle kingdom,
Time period.
okay?
And the
then
Old Kingdom
Moses
was
lives
the
in what's
only
called
time
the
period
New Kingdom
in
time
which
period.
they built.
And the Old Kingdom was the
So,
only
did
time
the
period
children of Israel,
in which
did
they
they work
built
on pyramid buildings
pyramids.
when they were in
So, did the
No, because
children of Israel, did they work on
they're
pyramid
burying their
buildings
kings in the
when
valleys
they were
of the
enslaved?
kings.
No,
They're not
because they're
building
here.
those anymore. And the
They're here
Bible
at
is
this time. They're
completely
burying their
correct
kings in
about
the
that.
valley
What
of
it
the
says
kings.
is
They're not
that
building
they
those
are
anymore.
building
And the Bible is
storehouses,
completely
which
correct
is
about that.
ironic.
What it says
Because the Pharaoh
is that
didn't
they
know
are
about
building
Joseph.
storehouse
And Joseph
cities,
was the one
which
who
is
came up with
ironic.
the great idea
Because the
of
Pharaoh
storing
didn't know
all
about
the food
Joseph,
that they
and
would
Joseph
make.
was the one who
Egypt
came up with the
becomes
great
such an
idea
important
of
area
storing
of
all
growing
the
food
food
in the world
that they would
that
make.
the famine that
Egypt
brings,
becomes such
the
an important
children of
area
Israel
of
down there,
growing
brings
food in the
Jacob down
world
there,
that
and
the
all that
famine that brings,
supremely
the
important
children
to
of
the world.
Israel down there, brings Jacob
Later
down
on,
there,
Greece
and all that
is going to start
supremely
growing and growing and growing,
important to the world's
and they are
economy.
not going to be
Because
able
later
to
on,
become
Greece
a great
is going to start
civilization
growing and
without
growing and
more
growing,
food because they live
and
in
they
a
are
mountainous
not
area.
going to be able
But
to
what they
become
do,
a
and what
great
they know really
civilization
well, is
without
how
more food because
sail
they
the
live in a
seas.
mountainous area.
So they come
But
south
what they
to
do
Egypt,
and what they know
start
really well is how
start
to
trading.
sail the seas.
And
So
what
they come
Greece
south to
brings
Egypt
to
and they
Egypt
start
are two
they
very
start
important
trading
things.
with Egypt.
They bring
And what
olive
Greece brings to Egypt
Okay.
are
Because they have
two
so many
very
olives
important
there,
things.
that is
They bring
hugely
olive oil
important to the ancient world.
because they have so
And
many
then
olives
secondly,
there,
they bring
and that
wine.
is just
Okay.
hugely
And then what
important
does
to
Egypt
the
give
ancient
Greece?
world.
It
And
gives
then
them
secondly,
lots
they
of
bring
grain
wine.
and food.
Okay.
And, of
And
course,
then what
Egypt's
does
got a
Egypt
corner on
give
it.
Greece? It gives
The
them
gold starts
lots of
going out throughout
grains
the world
and
at
food.
that
And of
time
course,
as well.
Egypt's got
Very,
corner
very
on gold.
important, Egypt.
And
Now,
so
Egypt
gold
is
starts
also
going out throughout the
important
world
to
at
its
that time as
influence
well.
upon the
Very,
Israelites.
very important, Egypt.
Even
Now,
though the
Egypt is
Hebrew
also
slaves
important
left
to its
Egypt,
influence
kind of
upon the
demoralized.
Israelites.
The influence that
Even though the
Egypt
Hebrew
upon
slaves
Israel
left
is chronicled in the
Egypt,
Bible
kind
again
of
and again.
demoralized,
First of all,
the
Solomon
influence of
married
Egypt upon
an
Israel
Egyptian princess.
is chronicled in the
That
Bible
causes
again and
problems.
again. First of
But
all,
that's done as a
Solomon
political
marries
move
an
to
Egyptian
ensure
princess.
that Egypt
That
will
causes
try, because
problems
Egypt
there.
is very
But that's done as a
strong in
political
that
move
area.
to
Several
ensure
times in
that
history.
Egypt won't try,
In the
because
area
Egypt
of
is
Canaan.
very
And so
strong
this
in that
seal,
area
Solomon
several
wants to do
times
that
in
to
history.
seal it up.
In
and
the
not have
area
any
of Canaan.
problems.
And
The
so this
Egyptians
seal,
ransacked
Solomon wants to do
Jerusalem,
that to
however.
seal it up and not
Right
have
after
any
Solomon
problems.
dies, when
The
Rehoboam
Egyptians
comes to
ransacked
They take
Jerusalem,
away a lot of
however.
the treasures of
Right
the
after Solomon
That's
dies,
a
when
messy
Rehoboam
time
comes to
during
the throne.
Rehoboam's reign there.
Yeah, they take away a
Josiah
lot of the
fought an
treasures of
Egyptian
Jerusalem, and
king,
that's a messy time
and
during
died
Rehoboam's
in battle.
reign.
That is chronicled.
Josiah fought an
It
Egyptian
is
king,
also
Necho,
chronicled
and died in battle. That is chronicled in the Bible.
extra
It is
biblical
also chronicled
writings. And
in
the Bible calls Pharaoh
extra biblical
but we in history call
writings.
him
And
Pharaoh.
the Bible calls
Spelled
the Pharaoh
three different
Shishak,
different
but we in
And Judah's
history
kings
call
during
Pharaoh
Jeremiah's time
Necho.
trusted Egypt
Spelled
to
about
save
three
them from the
different
Babylonians.
ways.
They always
And Judah's
used
kings
Egypt
during
as a
Jeremiah's time
really
trusted
powerful place.
Egypt to save them
And
from
they
the Babylonians.
foolishly looked
They
at
always
Egypt to
perceived
save them
Egypt
from
as a really,
the
really
Babylonian
powerful
king
place.
Nebuchadnezzar. But
And they foolishly looked to Egypt to save them from
now,
the
we're not
Babylonian
going to be
king
able to get to
Nebuchadnezzar,
Canaanite
but it
beginnings.
did
We're
not
going
work
to,
out.
that's the part that I knew I wasn't going to get
Now,
to today.
we're not going to be
So
able
we
to get to
will look
Canaanite
at
beginnings. We're going to,
and
that's the
all
part
about
that I knew
how
I
they
wasn't going to get
began
to today.
then
So we will
from
look
Saul
at
to the fall
Canaan
of Israel
and all
next
about
time.
how
We
they
want to,
began and then take from Saul to the fall of Israel
numbers out of there
next
right
time.
now.
We want to, do I have my little thing? I want you to pull 4 numbers out of there right now. We're going to be giving away
Yes, sir.
our 4 Bible timeline.
Hey, Mark.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Could you put the slide back up with Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New
There we
Kingdom?
go.
Absolutely.
Anybody
Okay.
have questions while he's ready to
While
pull
we
a
do
number
this,
out?
let's see, go back. There we go.
I know I
Anybody have questions while he's ready to pull a number
Do
out?
more discussion. Okay, get your first number.
I know I spoke a lot today. I hope next time we will be able to do more discussion. Okay, get
I
your
have
first
got
number.
glasses.
Do you have glasses? I have to have glasses.
Got one. There you go, Tim.
One.
All right.
I never went in.
Got one. Here you go, Tim.
They're going to feel really badly getting one now.
Did everybody get a wrap?
Okay. That's one. By the
You're
way,
gonna
you got
feel
to
really
read
bad
the
when you
you got to read the
Okay, Next one. By the way, you got to do this every week. You got to get a new one.
285-247.
Next one.
I don't know.
It's going to come over here.
Next one. It's going to come over here.
285-300.
Yeah, baby.
All right, Jean.
285-285.
She might give it away.
All right, Gene.
Can I have that back? please?
I should only go to California
Oh, that was
residents.
Okay, so we'll do this again next week.
Ooh,
I
that
hope
was
you
bad.
so much enjoyed
Okay, so we'll do this again next week. I hope you learned a lot. I so much enjoyed talking to you about this. If you have any questions afterward, I have to end at 6
for
o'clock.
those of you who have children,
because they're going to end
it always
upstairs
helps
at
them
6
if you go up
o'clock.
there and retrieve
And
your children.
for those of you who have
Like
children
children
upstairs, it always helps them if you go up there and retrieve your children. They don't like to give your children away to anybody that they don't know.
Our Father, we thank
And
you so
that's
much for
really
the
important.
concept.
Let's bow in prayer as we
We pray that we've been able to learn some things
Our Father,
about
we thank you
and
so
about
much
how
for
you
time
work
together
in
tonight.
these
We pray that we've been able to learn some things about you and about how you dealt
and Father, we're going to see that
in
more and more as the week goes
these
on.
civilizations
I
and
pray
these
that we'll all be
empires.
helped in understanding
And Father, we're
how
going to
you
see that more and
work
more as the
with
week
people
goes
and
on.
bringing
I just
about
pray that we'll all be helped in understanding how you've worked through
thank
your
you so
people
much for your
in
Son,
bringing
who
about
means
the
everything
gospel
to
that
us,
we so
and
treasure
in whom
today.
we have
We
fellowship
thank you so much for your
because
Son,
of his
who means
great
everything to us,
In the name of
and
Jesus,
in
we
whom we have fellowship
Thank you, everyone.
because of his great sacrifice. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Thank you, everyone.